My name is Andy. I'm operations manager here at IKYA Center. Really just one of the premier centers in the world for the study of spiritual principles at a level unlike anything you've experienced. And we're so excited to be launching tonight this series we're calling IKYA Live, the world news from the spiritual perspective. And again, a big intention we have with this series is taking the headlines that are grabbing our attention every day and pulling them apart, really looking at what's happening and trying to see it from a higher perspective and see the spiritual principles that are playing out in all of the things happening around us every day. So IKYA and I will be having a conversation. There may be guests in the future. And again, if you would like to ask questions directly, please sign up for the Zoom link. You can join us there, and then you'll be able to ask questions in the chat on Zoom. Otherwise, enjoy watching the stream live on IKYATube, our YouTube channel. All right. So as our starting point, what we were talking about is that one tendency in spirituality has been to withdraw from the world as a way to bring that inner focus. But we'd like to try to turn our spiritual focus outward in this series. And with that, I'd like to turn over. Well, actually, IKYA, would you like me to introduce the topic for tonight first? Let's see. I'm going to switch cameras. There we go.
There we are. Now, first of all, I'm going to explain a little bit about why we're doing this. Number one, I think it can be fun, but it's also extremely important that people of consciousness are taking part, right? That we read the news, that we're part of the world and what's happening. So many people in spirituality, they're not taking part. They withdraw into what we often talk about as a spiritual bubble, where we can see and watch everything, but it's like we don't care and it's not relevant to us, but it is. From my perspective, we incarnate only when it's absolutely necessary and where it's absolutely necessary. So being part of this world is your path. We should care more than anyone else. So as part of the spiritual awakening, we also have to wake up to the fact that we are part of this planet. We're part of the culture. And we should be among the first to lift. We should be part of the transformations, not just by sitting and meditate, but to go out there and be part of the world. And, there are so many things happening. There's always stuff in the news, and it can be difficult to navigate. And we can be sucked into the collective narratives, the fear, the hate, the conflicts. Instead of looking at it from a spiritual perspective and understanding that it's simply karmic process. This is what's needed to heal. This is what's needed for the collective consciousness and for individuals to actually grow. It can be very difficult to see it, right, and connect with it. And looking at what's going on in the world with love and with excitement and feeling that we're part of it, right? So what we will be trying to do here is to inspire and to make it easier to see not what's happening from the manifestation level, but looking at the spiritual plan, looking at the spiritual unfoldment taking place right before our eyes, and how we can be part of it, how we can also in our lives and with the people we know, bring in more healthy perspectives. Because as you know, as spiritual people, taking part in the conversations at work or in family gatherings can be difficult, right? Because we live in such a different perspective. And often we just withdraw and we sit there and hope that, can I leave soon? Because we don't know how to contribute, how to bring in our perspectives. And this is also, hopefully, how you will be inspired, so that you understand more of how we can work with the spiritual perspectives and consciousness and make it relevant in the normal world with what's happening, right? So we can bring in perspectives that can assist people in thinking and connecting, and also seeing their own path and seeing the learning and potentials. But, back to why we have a tendency to withdraw. I've explained this many times, but when you look at spirituality and religion over the tens of thousands of years where humans have existed, it's always been about trying to disconnect, trying to get away from here, because and there was no way out, and the life in itself was very difficult. So dealing with practices and religions and belief systems was mainly about trying to figure out how to get out of here, how to not suffer, how to be able to control your own pain and to get a better life. And many religions then promised you, if you just keep going, if you're just able to suffer your way through life, you will be rewarded on the other side. Right? So it's been mostly about trying to figure out how to get away, get to someplace better. So that's kind of stuck, right? And spirituality today also attracts people who often feel that they don't fit in, right? And then the plan is to get away, to not be part of it, and also to, in a way, legitimize us being on the sideline, not taking part in this. I'm not part of this. But we are. If we operate in a higher consciousness, it's our duty to then behave in a way that can uplift and to assist others. And that's hopefully, what this show will help you in doing, becoming a relevant person in the conversations and discussions that you have with other people, and also for your own study. As it can be very difficult to see the spiritual principles and the spiritual potentials in what's happening in the world. And because we're so bombarded with the suffering and the aggression from the human consciousness and the kind of collective narrative, we're often left with either we just have to go with it or we have to disconnect. Right? We will build different ways of looking at things and giving you kind of narratives and things to work with. That can be just also very interesting. Remember, part of what I teach is being able to look at the human journey with a sense of humor and look at the inconsistencies and all the weird things that we do, because we do a lot of very strange things as humans. And although it's harmful, it can also be funny, right? So whenever we talk about things and talk about also the bullshit of the human journey, we'll try to have a sense of humor about it, to have a lighthearted approach, so you can gravitate towards seeing the potentials and how you can actually use what's going on in the world to look at yourself, right? Because when something is going on in the world, we can always use that as a mirror. And so, like, how is this relevant to me? What am I doing that is part of this? And then learn to truly be part of the world and to incarnate fully, but also being in a not only spiritual consciousness, but also to be in service. And, often when I talk with people who have chosen the path of disconnection and withdrawal, they'll say to me, like, well, I choose God instead, so this is not relevant. And often what I say to them is, when you say that, you basically disconnect God from creation. And creation is the closest we can get to God, or, source, whatever we want to call it. And manifestation, the manifest reality, is the language. It's the dialogue, it's the expression. It's how we learn what the divine reality is and how it expresses. And one of the ultimate spiritual goals is to be able to be in a state of co-creation, which means that everything that we are as spiritual essence is available to life as part of the ongoing creation that never stops. And we don't just get there, we have to practice, right? And when we experience the world as difficult to deal with, it's us. It's always divine. And the deeper we go in ourselves, the deeper we're able to connect to life and to the world. And we will see that beyond this very thin icing on top, being the collective consciousness, there is reality. There is absolute order. There is divine expression. But we have to see it. We have to learn the language. And we have to speak it as well. And when we understand that creation and all the universes are basically the language and the expression between what we can refer to as God and consciousness, not taking part in it, is basically saying that I want to become an expert in literature and language by not reading books. We have to take part. We should be better at this than everybody else. And I invite you to take part in this journey where you can become the expert, where you can offer other people perspectives that can lift them up from the collective negativity and criticism and suffering. So we can have fun being here on this planet in all this madness and creativity and opportunity and make use of it, right? Because if we want to be of service, if we want to be in a state of love for others, we have to be here. We have to participate. We have to be where people are. And we need to be relevant. I spend so much time trying to break down spiritual principles and spiritual teachings that may be very, very difficult to grasp for the human mind. And I always try to figure out how can I make this and turn it into something that is both relevant and something that people can use. Because unless I turn it into something that someone can receive, as I often say, then I'm just talking to myself. So being here and being part of the world is learning the language of expression, learning how the divine expresses itself, and to go beyond our own perception. Don't believe the collective stories. Don't believe the collective narrative. They are always the result of suffering. And you can learn to look at what's happening in the world and actually understand it and see why it's necessary. And one thing we need to remember is that when something happens, it's because it's absolutely necessary, because it's math. So when something happens, it's part of a long kind of chain of manifestations and events. So when something happens, there is no alternative to that, because if there was an alternative, that would happen instead. So when something happens, that's the correct expression of consciousness, energy, information, karma, whatever is in that very point, that very moment. So instead of judging and say, oh, it should have been this way, as I always say, like the key to understand suffering is the thought that it should have been different. And that's so much of the conflicts that we have in ourselves. It's so much of the conflicts we have with the world and also in the collective conscious and society in general. Learning to understand that nothing should or could have been different. It's impossible, because everything that happens is a rendering of information that is kind of behind that rendering, and that is the correct mathematical equation containing everything that is available in that point, in that moment. And then we get that. So we can learn. If we want something else, then we have to learn to create it. And part of this planet learning and this culture learning to do better and to do differently is you being here. People of consciousness, we have a duty. We have an obligation. We can't lift the planet if everybody able to do so are withdrawing, right? We have to engage. So I got a bit of COVID like everybody else, so I will be coughing a little bit today. But this is really the journey that we want to make with all of you, and to have wonderful discussions and perspectives. And as we talk and discuss, please just post comments as we go. You don't have to wait until you find like the right question. Just be part of it and try to play around with perspectives and lifting your observation of the world into the spiritual realm. And from that point, explore, how do we then live this insight? How can we make a difference? So I hope that this will be fun. We've been looking forward to this for a very long time. And also, I think, this is relevant. I think having conversations like these are important, right? To move spirituality out of being something separate and seeing that it's actually an integral part of life and everything that happens. But as people of consciousness, we kind of have to take leadership for those perspectives and communicate them. But for everyone to get more insight into what's actually going on and to play around with it, I think is really important, and something I've seen is missing. Because often when it comes to spiritual teachings, they are a bit separate from what's going on in our daily lives and what's going on politically and everything else. So many people have questions, and often they come to me with questions about how life is relevant. Because in modern spirituality, many people have come to the conclusion that life is not really relevant, right? Things that are happening are just there as part of the background, part of the noise. Instead of seeing that it's life communicating with them, and what we see and how we relate to it, that's up to ourselves and our own level of consciousness. So hopefully this can be inspiring, and that you get totally new thoughts and ideas. And that you also feel comfortable spreading this to other people. Because this is not about having the right answers. This is about exploring what modern spirituality actually is when we place it in the real world, in the current events of politics and economics and war and whatever else. So you're welcome, and just be part of this and try to have fun. We will certainly try to have as much fun as we can. Andy, do you have anything to offer?
We'll switch over to me. We're practicing this 2-camera system. So I think we're ready to move into our topic for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing as we go through week after week is we're going to be following the news as we always do. But if something pops out, inspires us, gets us provoked or curious, that's what we're going to bring to IKYA Live. And last week I was particularly kind of tickled, if I can say it that way, that nuclear power, nuclear energy was in the headlines, especially here in Norway. For those outside of Norway, you may not be aware that actually Norway could have been and could still be in the future, the world's powerhouse for nuclear energy. That may come as a shock. Everybody knows Norway as one of the big oil producers, also huge in hydroelectric power, that kind of thing. But we also have almost unparalleled deposits of a radioactive element called thorium. As I understand the science, thorium is a precursor element, so it's a even larger element than uranium. And when you are able to get some of the or split the atom, basically, it degrades down to uranium. And because of that, you get basically 2 nuclear reactions for one, and you get a lot more energy out of this element than you get from uranium. And we also discovered that thorium is much more common in the Earth's crust than uranium. But why is nuclear energy such an interesting topic for us to discuss? To me, it has to do with the fact that nuclear energy is super smart. It's very high tech. It's a really interesting idea. And yet we have over and over again the past decades continued to choose both fossil fuels and combustion engines, but also these like very invasive renewable energy like solar and wind and hydro, even the waves and all these different things that are requiring massive intrusions into nature. So IKYA, I put it to you, what if we just start kind of from that higher perspective, what is the spiritual significance of this kind of bizarre and repeating choice that we're making in our choice of energy sources?
Right. I think it's not just when it comes to energy, but with everything. If we just look at the case of thorium, for instance, and nuclear, because obviously now with the energy situation in the world, one is starting to look at nuclear as part of the solution. And it is. Remember that nuclear has developed a lot over the last decades. And with thorium, there's absolutely no risk of meltdowns. It can't happen. And it's also about 200 times as efficient as uranium. So we get 200 times the amount of energy out of thorium as you would with the equal amount of uranium. And as Andy mentioned, there's also 3 times as much thorium available. So, but it's this resistance, right? And it's not just because we've had meltdowns, because there's certainly been incidents with oil as well. But it's basically, we have a tendency as humans to choose what we already know, what we already can understand. And think of, when we started using oil, it's something we can understand because it burns. Throughout history, like forces of nature, fire, explosions, wind, water, it's something we can relate to, something we can understand. And it means that when we have combustion engines, we think we can understand it, right? It's the same with wind turbines and whatnot. We think we can understand it. But nuclear, it's foreign. Emotionally, we feel it's wrong because we feel that we are not in control. And we think, based on having used fire for thousands and thousands of years, that we are in control, we understand it. It's part of our genetics at this point. So anything foreign takes more time. And it also means that innovation is not going as fast as it could. Because humans have a tendency to not necessarily choose the best options. They choose what they think they know and understand from before. So we cannot really innovate like farther than the collective consciousness will allow the world to go. And unless we can emotionally recognize it, we have a tendency to resist too much. Whereas when we look at the concept of free energy, this is not conspiracy theory, but there have been plenty of examples of individuals having developed what we can call free energy, basically making use of the Earth magnetism. And people don't want it. You cannot just blame the oil companies, because they're also part of the collective consciousness. It's part of our collective journey. But when you look at what humans collectively choose, it's not necessarily the best. We've seen that throughout history. Like the typical example that's often being used is when you look at, in the 70s and 80s, where the concept of home video became a thing, VHS, that kind of became the standard, was actually the worst technology. It was absolutely worse. The other technologies were better, and yet people chose VHS because they thought they had an emotional response to that technology. We hardly ever, as humans, want something to be too good. Remember that human life has been suffering, right? And we think we deserve it. That's also part of religion. We are sinners, so we deserve to suffer. And by suffering, we prove that we're willing to pay the price for being terrible so that we may enter a better place. Now, the problem with what I call free energy is that it's abundant and you don't have to suffer, right? It makes it very difficult for a collective consciousness obsessed with suffering to accept it, because then it's just there. We think we want it, but we don't. All solutions humans choose normally has a negative impact, because we think if we want something good, there has to be something bad, right? We can't have good things unless we get punished. So when we do something good for ourselves, it has to be terrible for the environment. So this element of suffering and punishment is something that the collective human consciousness has still not been able to let go of. So there's been opportunities for the human civilization to go in the direction of free energy many, many times over the last decade or more. But every time it gets shut down because it's not compatible with a collective way of thinking. So, and this is also when we, for instance, look at now starting to look at sustainability and healing the planet. That has to be done by punishing people, right? We have to suffer because now we have to pay the price, right? It's that way of thinking. So like most strategies, when it comes to the environment, have this element of punishment, and that we can't lead good lives. And basically, we have to take a step back. And humans don't want that. So often said that humans collectively have decided that we'd rather die than go backwards. We will not leave our kind of comfortable functioning life and choose something that we feel is a step back. Then we would rather continue and the whole planet just, go wherever it goes. So it's not easy for humans to choose solutions that do not contain suffering and punishment. So look at the whole civilization, right? Everything we do, everything we relate to, if it's good, it has to be bad, right? And then we reverse that. If it's bad for us, it has to be good, right? And it's that way of thinking that makes it very, very difficult. And the same thing with nuclear is on the verge of being too good to be true, because today's technology means that you can do it safely and you can produce a lot of energy and it's completely safe. And humans don't want that to be true. It's easier to accept nuclear energy if it's dangerous. So human innovation is still going very slowly because of this. We think we have to understand it, and it has to be an element of punishment and suffering. It's fully possible for this culture to figure out how to heal the planet and at the same time create even better lives. But we have to want it, right? As long as we have a collective and global culture based on suffering, it's very difficult. So, in your own life, how are you doing this thing? You know, it's important that we look at our own suffering and our own opportunities. Because, for instance, when it comes to stories about what we think we deserve, right? That's suffering. And often when we are offered things that are too good, that may be like simply good with no negativity, no negative consequences, we reject it because we feel we don't deserve it. We can accept it if it's also bad, right? Because then it fits the narrative. Spiritually, it's extremely important that we learn to let go of suffering because it's not necessary at all. We can learn to, love and be joyful and to do great things that do not harm anyone, including ourselves. But I've seen so many people, and I'm sure, you've experienced that in your own life or other people's lives, that because of this suffering narrative, we think that if we're not suffering enough, we're not doing our job. Even spiritual work has to be so hard and difficult. And people can get completely lost in this competition, right, of trying to show how hard we're working and how our process is so overwhelming and, and it's a suffering complex. Growing spiritually means healing, which means we should be free and happy, right? And just be in a state of balance. We can live very happy, productive lives that are also good for the planet, also good for everyone around us. Remember that life is abundant. It's truly abundant. There is no limit to anything. Because behind the projection, there is an enormous flow, limitless energy and information. What we end up with is how much of it we as a collective consciousness allow. So just like you are kind of channeling your own flow, the human life form and consciousness as one kind of uniform body is also channeling its own flow. And only how much it allows it will come through, and that will become our reality. So we can definitely do more and play more. But the question is, how are you dealing with this in your own life? Do you choose options and solutions you recognize because they also cater to your suffering, and your need to suffer? And the answer is probably yes. Learning to choose abundance and understanding that it's real, it's a spiritual principle. And as you know, when you are in spiritual balance, it can happen when you meditate, it can happen when you're happy, where, out in nature, we just feel that I'm in this point of synchronicity. You can experience that abundance. You just know that this flow is coming through, and you can feel that all your needs are gone, right? Because it's just flow and it's abundant and you're not stopping it. So, just like our journey spiritually is about not stopping, not blocking nature, understanding that there's complete abundance, complete healing available. But our resistance means that we are blocking it. This is why I say, when we study love, we have to study how we are blocking it, because everything is love to start with. our experience is limited because we're in the state of blocking it. So everything is available to you, but you're blocking it. So we only allow what we can recognize, what will fit our narratives and stories. And when we have negative stories about ourselves, that will become the narrative from which we decide what to allow in. And then we experience poverty, not necessarily just, materially, but also spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's simply how much you allow. Nature just wants you to have everything because it already belongs to you. Your flow is limitless. And yet people experience depression, which is lack of experience of flow, because we're pushing it away. It doesn't fit our stories about ourselves. So innovation is being stopped by this. And as, a spiritual student, you have the responsibility to try to go beyond this, because we need to set the example. So try to play with abundance. Try to look at how you are blocking the abundance of absolutely everything. Because the more you vibrate that, the more that, of course, will influence the collective consciousness. Because that's how it can get lifted. If you are part of vibrating the higher kind of frequencies, right? You're kind of stretching the octave, right, of human existence. The more assistance we have, the more we'll kind of be in the bottom. So the more you open up, the more you live, love, the more you go beyond suffering, you can actively be part of opening the collective consciousness for higher innovation. It's interesting that, again, free energy has been available to humans in this civilization for more than 100 years. And it's been introduced again and again and again, and it's just being shut down because people don't want it. And until people like you are able to leave suffering behind, it will never happen. All problems on this planet can easily be solved. All of them. It's very simple. The principles needed to heal the civilization and make it become an instrument of a healing intention, also balancing the planet, while we at the same time get even better lives. But we need to activate the higher level, and we have to do it in our own lives first. The basic principle here is so important that you can never lead anyone further along than you've walked yourself, right? Your high level of consciousness, wherever that is, that's as far as you go. And unless you're able to vibrate it and live it, you're not able to be part of lifting anyone beyond that point. Suffering and the addiction to suffering is the one most important factor in why humans are still doing all of these weird, destructive things, and why we still choose technologies that are very destructive and harmful to ourselves and the environment. We are basically polluting the whole planet, as we know. Humans are so full of chemicals now that it's, of course, inhibiting both not only having kids, but all these illnesses, mental illnesses, many different forms of degeneration. And we still keep going because we like to suffer. Learn to not suffer. and to embrace fun. I emphasize playfulness and fun a lot in spirituality because when we are in a natural state of healing, we laugh at everything. We don't take anything seriously, including ourselves. Taking something serious at all is suffering, right? Because when you have something and then you go, oh, I should be different, right? This should have been different. Oh, I can't do this. It's all these stories of self-judgment, which is part of the suffering complex. We need to learn to loosen up and see, like, whatever happens on this planet, it's actually easily fixed. It's the consciousness problem. Because when you are in a certain type of consciousness, how that consciousness operates will have to be reflected in the world. Because that's how you heal, that's how you grow past it. And you can't see the solutions. You can't see, opportunities and possibilities and potentials beyond that level of consciousness. It's only when that consciousness changes that one can then see different solutions. And this is why we have to be part of the world. We can't just sit on the side. We have to work on ourselves in such a way that we represent the changes in consciousness necessary for this planet to move forward. So there are a lot of innovation going on in the world, which means that we can accelerate the path forward towards humans learning to live in harmony with themselves and the planet. But all of that can be shut down if humans are not willing to let go of suffering and to not project it onto each other as well. But if you are not able to do that, nobody is. Because spiritual students have the opportunity to understand what reality truly is and work with abundance, work with flow, and learn to love what actually is instead of being addicted to what everything should have been instead. So when it comes to kind of nuclear and looking at the rejection as a step towards free energy, because unless we accept nuclear, we will not get into free energy. It's actually a step on that path. And so it is with a lot of innovations that are coming at this point, and that different places, different parts of the world, there is a lot of work being done in different areas. But again, it may end up in absolutely nothing if we're not able to stretch the consciousness, right? So learn to think positively about all of this. And as I said, try to be in that overview of all technology and all solutions and see that we can only, as humans, so far accept something good if it also contains something bad. Once you start seeing it, you can see it in everything, and even your own choices. Because if it doesn't contain bad, what do? We start feeling bad. We create guilt to balance out the good. This is what we do. If we eat something really delicious, then we create, I shouldn't. Oh, I'm getting fat. Like, shut up. It's like we need to learn to just enjoy, but it's very difficult because we collectively have this suffering complex, right? So when, again, something good does not contain bad, we will make it up. And we also think that bad makes us better humans. It doesn't. Right? So look at this in yourself and try to practice making choices and being in a consciousness that only contains good, and I can see that you can do good for good, and everybody can be uplifted. No punishment, no suffering. Learn to enjoy and to really vibrate that love and excitement about moving yourself forward, moving the world forward. And also follow the news. And when you look at people actually trying, whatever they're trying, try to also direct your positive attitude and vibration. Often when people are trying, they meet a wall of resistance. If what they are offering does not contain suffering, people don't want that. So try also be instrumental in creating that energy in space where people are actually making an effort to bring the world forward, where they can feel also a sense of protection from all of that negativity. Because often they have an idea, or they're channeling something, and we should be helping. That's one very concrete thing you can do. Whenever someone is really trying, and you can recognize that they're doing whatever they're doing from a state of heart, try to vibrate love. Try to connect with what they're doing, and try to be uplifting and encouraging. And just leave the rest, right? Criticizing the world is not helping. Criticizing other people and their intentions, it fuels the suffering. So look for the ones who are actually, making an effort, those who care, and decide to kind of look for those gems and to nurture and give positive energy to that. It might seem naive, but remember that we're all vibrating energy. We're all vibrating information. And we need to kind of stretch the top layer into higher frequency, because that will then affect the collective consciousness so that it can open up more. That's our job. It's not for normal people. This is what we do. So we should be doing it. And try just to practice and to be a being of uplifting vibration. So again, when you look at the news and you feel that you connect, uplift, be there, and then be part of a positive change. Do you have any questions or comments?
Again, my name is Andy. I'm the operations manager here at IKYA Center in Oslo, and you are with us in IKYA Live, our first sort of soft launch tonight, looking at world news from the spiritual perspective. And tonight's topic is nuclear energy, and at least from my perspective, the most important part of that is how do we humans continually make these sort of silly choices when a lot better options are presented to us. And Ingunn here in Norway, she wrote into us with an interesting question, looking at how can we as humans support all levels of consciousness to be united in making more productive choices, like choosing nuclear energy. And from her perspective, she's guessing that maybe fear holds us back often, and the idea of like boundaries, geography, countries, nations, different political divisions. And another listener asks, does capitalism and that sort of competition come into the picture here? So that's really the question to you, IKYA, is what can we as individuals, as groups do to help us make more productive choices? And could you speak to fear or competition or other things as part of how we've gotten here today?
Right. I think those are excellent perspectives, because, like, it always comes back to our own journeys. Because when you vibrate purely, remember that you already exist everywhere. You just you haven't developed the full consciousness to comprehend what that means and to be able to be everywhere for real, but you're already as soul, as Atma, as a spiritual essence, present everywhere. So when we do something in our own process and when we wake up more, that will vibrate. If you can think of yourself as a type of, basic elements, or like a type of thread in a weave that is the whole universe. When you change yourself, that type of thread will also change. This is why when we make an active growth change in ourselves, it affects the world because we are part of it. And that is the most important thing we can do. But also, when we have the intention of interacting, of co-creating, of being present, it means that this vibration will be more interactive. It will be more present, and it will affect people differently from when you are in a state of disconnect, because then that will be the information that you're emanating. So it always comes down to us doing the job and then setting the example through our actions in the world. Because, the more we grow, the more we understand that the journey is to change ourselves. And then we need to understand the world instead of trying to change it. But the change comes by modulating consciousness, and for us to be instrumental in that. So when you want to lift consciousness, you have to lift your own first. It's that simple. So that's what we can do. And yes, there are multiple ways of how we block ourselves, and fear is definitely one of them. But I think it's for each and every one of us to explore more like, why aren't we kind of doing more of this? And instead of thinking that, oh, I have to work through so much, let's just say I can just choose to be more uplifting. You don't need to understand, how your mother didn't see you as a label to be more uplifting. Just decide to be more uplifting. And often we have a tendency to make things more complicated than they are. We don't always have to go into these enormous cycles of karmic rabbit holes. Sometimes when we say, oh, right, I can just change my behavior, like, do that. I can change my practice. I can decide to be more uplifting. I can just decide to be someone who's vibrating that higher frequency, and to, in my own life, make more innovative choices and choose abundance, choose what's good, and practice letting go of the thought of suffering and negativity, thinking that that is something that we need to have, because we don't. We have to practice. And as you practice, as you get more purified, the vibration that you represent as a tuning fork will then also be pure. It's not difficult, but learn to go directly to the potential, because your karma only represents all the different ways you have resistance. So if you say, oh, right, I decide to not resist, I want to go towards my potential, well, your karmic complex in that area serves no purpose anymore, because it's simply, again, a description of all the different ways we resist. So we can go directly towards the potentials. And that's also a great example to set and to show people. The other question was?
Does capitalism?
Yes. Capitalism is, so far, I think, the best systems humans have come up with in this civilization. It's not perfect, but because humans have hierarchy, they have, they are competitive, they want us to survive, it kind of works. but it's very primitive. Humans will come up with something that's far better, and they have to, um, because capitalism really doesn't work. It still works better than other systems, but that doesn't say much when it comes to humans. So, yes, humans have to come up with something better, and I think capitalism has been instrumental in building a society and building a civilization where people can prosper and also have opportunities. Because that mindset in capitalism means that there are always room for innovation, for making things better. Instead, when you have systems where the system is perfect, and then you will not innovate, because just like capitalism has changed a lot, it's not the same as it used to be. Um, when you have systems that are more focused on the system itself, you will not accept that type of change and innovation. But as we move along, especially into next century, humans will evolve into something that works better. And remember that we will have artificial intelligence and robots and things being a part of this future that will change absolutely everything. And even economy itself and how it operates will be very, very different. So all the models that we have today, including capitalism, will gradually disappear for something better. And but capitalism, of course, humans being hierarchical, has of course been used to also push people down, right? But it's part of how humans study their own value systems and hierarchies and learn how to interact with others. So we just need many different models and systems, and just try to look at also capitalism and other systems from above. There are different playrooms, different principles, different mechanics, and we learn to develop different aspects of our own survival. But it's not important in and of itself. It just, give humans different models to play with, to then also, have different forms of role play, and to build things and destroy things. And it's just, it's basically just a huge video game. So if we do this way or that way, humans normally end up working on their karma regardless. So when we choose, for instance, to incarnate in the part of the world where capitalism is the kind of rules of the game, it's then because we are studying from that perspective. And it is an incredible system in many ways, showing human creativity and corruption, and innovation, and also everything else, as we know. But where we are at now, I think we need to leave systems behind. We're growing out of them. And we can see it also by how people are thinking. People are becoming more tribal. They just want to be with people who are like them. We can talk about that some other time, but it's when the world is becoming more complex, we want to belong more. And to belong, we need like-minded people. And that is becoming very complex, right? Because we just want to have our own group, our own family, because that's part of our genetics too. And the world has simply become too big. So as individuals, the groups, we're trying to make the world smaller by finding identity and connecting with those people, and because we are afraid. It's important when we look at also what's happening in the world around this, where people are they're basically tribalizing. That is natural. its natural response to fear, and can give people that safety to live in their own bubble. And the bigger and more dangerous the world is, the more we're drawn into a safe space that we think we can control, and then we want to kind of impose that on the world, and so does everybody else. And then we have a lot of these conflicts. But again, as with everything, trying to look at it from above and understand that everything that happens on this planet is absolutely necessary. This is a kindergarten. It's a place where we work out karma. And that means that we're constantly in conflict with ourselves and others as a way to activate our own karma and try to learn and heal. But by focusing on moving towards potentials more than dealing with our resistance, we can lift ourselves above the conflict and suffering complex and start having more fun. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, as we, I think, get close to rounding off for tonight, we run a course in the vibrational and spiritual principles around crystals. And it strikes me and others that uranium versus thorium, it might be interesting to just hear a little bit about what vibrationally and sort of principally do those two elements represent as sort of, what are the differences between those two, and why, how might that inform our choices? Yeah.
Right. Now, that's an interesting question, because when you look at how humans have used uranium, it was immediately weaponized, of course. Like whenever humans figure something out, weapons, So that triggered the kind of destructive patterns and behaviors, right? So it's part of the suffering complex. So it's then triggered a lot of fear, and it is more of that. It belongs more to destruction. And it contains more of that energy, that it's very powerful, but it has a vibration of going beyond what you can control. Thorium is a lot more playful, because it's simpler. And it does not contain the same aggression. So it is much more suited, in a way, for that kind of playful approach to innovation. It's a much kind of lighter vibration, much more, it has vibration that is more, in a way, integrated, more controlled, more contained. And it also has a certain amount of kind of happiness in its base vibration. So I think it's also back to what we discussed, is that we don't have to destroy ourselves and suffer and punish ourselves and others in order to have good things. So part of the resistance towards thorium is back to that it's more happy. It does not have that kind of suffering energy in it. And it's really interesting when you look at that material, because this should, in a way, if we were more intelligent, this should already have been a huge part of nuclear power all over the world, and it isn't. Because again, I think we need, as humans, to shift mindset a little bit first.
All right, I think we're going to take one last angle on this, and because it seems really important, and part of how we've struggled to choose nuclear power. How do we think about and address things like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, the big accidents, and even the most recent with the meltdown in Japan after the earthquake? How do we deal with that? And then I'll let you wrap it up for tonight.
Right. Okay. Now, remember that when something happens, it's because it's absolutely necessary. So if we start by first establishing that this was necessary. It was all necessary. And then we can say, like, why was it necessary? And when we look at Chernobyl, it was like it was almost like cancer. It was this wonderful rupture, also back to the control of the old Soviet, because this was a very old kind of Soviet plant, and it opened up so much. So it was part of that kind of karmic conflict energy that also needed to be released. And it's also showing that we are on the same planet. Is like also when you have problems in a country on the planet, countries don't exist. It's something that we've made up culturally, but we're all in this together. And gradually we as humans will have to grow into, as I call, like one people and one planet. It will happen because there is no other way to do it. So this was, part of getting, it's like often when you have an earthquake, right? It's release of tension. So it simply represented that kind of tension between, like Russia and Soviet and the West. And when that kind of opened up, it also opened much more of the kind of flow between those two spaces. So, but it's also understanding, as I said, like when we are in this old consciousness, we want destructive things to happen. And moving into the future, humans will have to learn to choose more wisely and to actively look for solutions that can uplift and nurture and heal and be fun and, work and create abundance at the same time with no negative side effects. Right? And just thinking about that, it feels that must be wrong, right? Because it's so ingrained in our culture. And this is what we're talking about, like old nuclear was more dangerous because that was a point. If it's that effective and efficient, it must be dangerous. It doesn't have to be. And there are plenty of technologies available to humans if the human consciousness can accept it, that will also be part of lifting humans into a more abundant way of being, an abundant way of living. So, again, in our own lives, look at the patterns in us, in all of us. Look at what's happening in your own life and your own sense of destruction and suffering and negativity. You don't need it. Once you see it, it's just silly. Why can't things just be good? They can. If they're not, it's because you choose the negative side too. When you are in balance, when you are in harmony, it means there is only harmony, there is only balance. And then good things happen and you create good things with that intention. And it works. And to me, this should be an important also goal in our spiritual studies, that we should actually be able to do this. We should be able to build our lives in such a way that they vibrate that harmony so that they're only good. It doesn't mean that we're not dealing with our karma, but again, we don't get caught up in the suffering stories. We move towards the potentials and we have fun and we learn and we grow and we go like as directly as possible to the potential. So that is what we can do with this. Become someone who adapts more quickly. Someone who chooses what is good, what is uplifting more quickly. And that you make choices in your life that represents that joy and abundance. and that you leave behind your old technologies that can also harm you, and leave behind the stories that you think things also have to be bad to be good, or if they're good, they're definitely bad for you. Choose a way of thinking. If something is good for you, well, it's good. It should be enjoyed. It's fun. There's one clinical study that was done a while ago. It's really interesting when it comes to this way of thinking. They had two groups, and they made like a nutritional shake. And one group was told this is full of calories and it's really yummy and all that. It was good, but it was like, this is fattening, and And the other was told that this is a slimming formula that will give you a lot of energy and all of that. And it was the same one. And after a while, they could see that the ones who'd been told this is very calorie rich, they actually get fatter. They gained weight, while the other group lost weight. It's all in the mind, right? It's how we see things. We create through our stories and narratives. And this is what we're talking about. Be an instrument for what's good, for what's abundant, for what's beyond suffering and destruction, because this is where we as humans have to go. This is what we need to do to lift the planet. And this is what you can do in your own life, to be an instrument in this enormous change that this civilization has to go through. So that's it for tonight. This is the first episode of hopefully hundreds. And we'll develop kind of the format over time, also as we are becoming more interactive and you guys become more interactive. So, keep questions coming. And if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like to explore, also please send them to us. And we'll see what we can do. Again, we want this to be more of a conversation. And hopefully over time, that will become the format. So that's it for us for tonight. See you some other time.
IKYA, thank you everyone for joining us. We are back with you next Monday at 7 o'clock Oslo time. And we call it Oslo time, and just in case you're wondering, because our time zones in Europe change for the summer. So when we get to daylight savings later on, just be sure to follow Oslo time. 7 o'clock Oslo time on Mondays. This is IKYA Live. I'm Andy, Operations Manager here at IKYA Center in Oslo, Norway. IKYA, our spiritual teacher and enlightened master, and we look so forward to seeing you in a week from tonight. Thank you.